So which elite spec is the best offensive healer in Guild Wars 2 PvE? This is the question we want to answer today in form of a tier list. As always, special shout out to all my supporters that help me keep the lights on. And now without much further ado, let's jump straight in. Big disclaimer at the beginning as usual, this is my personal take on the matter. Please let me know your take down in the comments below. Please be civilized. This is my take on the Celestial, Alacrity or Quickness healer that provides a lot of damage as well. So you play this in fights where you don't have crazy high healing amount is necessary. So typical 90% of the fights actually allow you to do this. And then of course having a build that does some damage and can heal is even better than just having a full-fledged healer that doesn't provide any damage. So that's why I want to make this tier list here. Of course, this is also not a solo tier list. Be sure to check out my solo tier list if you want to see this. This is Celestial gear in a group scenario, either in instance contents like raids, strikes, fractals, even convergences, even meta events in the open world, something where you have people around. This is really the thing that matters here. You have to have people around so that your support and your healing actually gets value, while you also do some damage. So now let's start first with the first tier, which would be the impossible tier. Pretty straightforward. In Guild Wars 2, a supporter, of course as well as the healer, needs to have either Alacrity or Quickness permanent for their subgroup. And then that already excludes like half of the elite specs and core classes. So let's put them here. So this is how it looks now. I hope I didn't forget anything. We have some elite specs that can't provide a boon permanently to their subgroup, and of course all the core classes. Now let's get into it with the medium armor classes. So let's start with Engineer. Engineer is quite special because Engineer has already to start out with only one really good healer, I would say. Heal Scrapper is really good, but if you play it with Celestial, I feel like the problem is you are neither there or there. So you are not full healing, you're not really providing that much value. I personally think you could make it work. I personally think for me that's a clear B tier. It works, but it is not insane in the value, and I think I would rather go for full heal Scrapper or full DPS power Quickness Scrapper. I think there is the middle ground here is not really that given, but it is definitely playable and not a meme tier. So that's why it's here. And don't forget, if you play a Celestial build, typically you also want to have a Condi part, because Condi is actually on Celestial way better than power, typically on a build. So that means builds that are favoring power, which is Scrapper, is not really helping too much. So Celestial Scrapper B tier for me, but you could make the argument, maybe some people want to put it in A tier, but I personally think it's either play a full DPS Scrapper or full offensive support Scrapper, or play a full healer. I think the middle ground here is not that good. Then we have Alacrity, Celestial Heal Mechanist, and I think the same goes for it. I think it is, Engineer is really locked with the trade lines and stuff to either heal or deal damage. You really can't put them both together typically. So especially because both of them are favoring power, and then you would not really take healing stats on there with Celestial and Condi. So it doesn't suit their general trade lines. That's why they are in B tier. You will see classes that are way better than those two, in my opinion, and they are in higher tiers. So that's just how it goes. It's playable, it's not meme tier for sure, but it's not as broken as other classes. Let's now go to Ranger. Ranger is very interesting. We have two classes, elite specs, that are actually surprisingly interesting in terms of in open world, in solo builds, they are really good with Celestial, but in group content, for example, Untamed, you can't really play it. That's the problem. The idea would be that you would play Staff in one hand, and on the other hand, you would play some aggressive weapon set. But you would have to swap all the time, and then you would lose all your healing, or you would lose all your damage. So it's like, the Celestial build could work, yes. I think because of that, it's a B tier for me. It could work, but it's so forced. I think it's not providing that much value. You would either go for full heal Untamed and don't have stability and be a good healer, or would be full DPS Untamed as a power version, or even Condi if you want it, but not play it Celestial. That's why it's in B tier. The same goes for Engineer. And then we have Druid. Druid is special. You could play Celestial Alacrity Druid, but you would deal no damage. So that's a meme tier for me. The problem is the Condi applying trait and the Alacrity trait share the same spot. So you have to decide if you go for a Condi build and don't apply any Alacrity, or you go for Alacrity but you don't deal any damage anymore. So Druid is absolutely meme. Don't play it as some kind of Celestial build. That doesn't work in that sense. I would say you could make the argument that in some encounters, sometimes it could be worth to provide a little bit more damage because you have some passive damage, then a little bit increased, yes, sure. But at this point, then maybe just play a single healer and don't provide, for example, like a celestial thing. But that's just my take. Of course, take everything that I say here with a grain of salt. I might be a bit biased towards some specific specs, playing some full healer or not, but I think I try to make my arguments clear here. Let's now go to Thief. Thief is obviously with Deadeye meme tier. I would say Heal Deadeye in the beginning is already a meme tier and Celestial is even worse, so just don't play that. You overcooked so much, don't do it. Then we have Spectre. I think Spectre on Celestial is the first S tier build. Celestial Spectre has crazy boon output, has crazy healing and barrier and cleanses and crazy damage. It's just a very good build. It's easy S tier for me. It deserves a spot in the highest of highest for Celestial healers, for sure. There is nothing to be said about that. S tier. Before I continue, I want to mention if you want to see more tier lists like that, don't forget to subscribe. And if you like this one, be sure to leave a like, that helps out my channel a bunch. Thanks. And now let's go to the light armor classes. So light armor classes, we have Necro. Necromancer has Scourge. Scourge is just a Spectre. Absolutely insane. Really good utility, really good boon output now with the staff changes if you wanted to, or the transfusion changes rather. And then also that you just provide a lot of barrier cleanses passively. And in most encounters, it's actually not necessary to run a full heal Scourge. You can easily go the Celestial way and you will actually provide way more value to your group. So easy S tier for me, builds like that exist and make sense in 90% of the encounters. If to run Celestial there, perfectly S tier, 100%. Then we have Harbinger. Harbinger is very interesting. In my opinion, Harbinger, because of the transfusion changes, actually got surprising amount of value by being played as some kind of Celestial build. This is maybe a very hot take, but I think Celestial Harbinger could be an A tier pick. I think if I'm a little bit, maybe I'm a little bit generous and should put it in B tier, but for now I will put it in A tier because actually the transfusion changes and the general thought process why you would take a Harbinger as a support and not a Scourge is actually providing you with a lot of damage because the Scourge Shrouds are actually really defensive, whereas the Harbinger Shroud is actually providing a lot of offensive skills already, and if you have Celestial, they scale good with power and Condi, it's actually surprisingly working quite well. Not a lot of people play that, and I think I would also not recommend it over a Scourge typically, but why not? Now let's get to Elementalist. Elementalist has insane Celestial Tempest build. I think Tempest is like one of the best builds to play as Celestial right now, because it's so flexible. It has surprisingly good healing. It might not be the craziest healer with Celestial, but it has surprising good damage on power and Condi, and has very good just boon uptime as well. It covers everything on a Celestial build that you would have to on a healer without like being absolutely crazy loss on the damage side. So I think it's really, really good, really strong, highly recommended. And then we have Catalyst. I think Catalyst for me has the problem that a Celestial Catalyst build would again be very, like, the stats favor Condi, whereas Catalyst itself doesn't favor Condi at all, the trait line. So the problem is for me, I don't see it, and for me that's because of that, because it's so favored towards power, and you need to run water to get some healing, and then you need to run probably fire, and then you don't really get that much value from Celestial. Or what kind of weapon would you run? You have to run staff, otherwise you can't provide enough healing or just boons. So I think the problem is the build is not suited for that. So that's why it's in meme tier. Maybe someone came up with a crazy cook and it could be in B or A tier even, but I actually don't see that being played. I really don't. I think if you want to play a supportive DPS Catalyst, go for a quickness DPS Catalyst and play power. Really, I don't see being played as a healer that also applies damage. I think that doesn't make sense. Or it doesn't work that way. Then let's go to Mesmer. Mesmer is interesting. You could play Celestial Chronomancer. I think Celestial Chronomancer for me is easy B tier. It works, you can play it, but I think it doesn't make that much sense because you either play full offensive quickness or alacrity DPS Chronomancer with power and it works very well, or you play the full alacrity or quickness heal Chronomancer. I think a Celestial build doesn't make that much sense, especially because the other elite spec is just way better at it. It's an easy S tier. Playing full Celestial, Staff Mirage, and go only to rival if you need a lot of healing, you can actually only on staff out-heal the extremely damaging golem field. And that's just insane. Just spamming attacks that deal actually damage and reaching high damage numbers, it's actually insane. Staff, Mirage with Celestial as a healer is really, really good. Really underrated. Of course, I also have a build guide about that one. So this is really like highly recommend to try it out, and that's crazily overshadowing Chronomancer. Either go full heal Chronomancer, or if you want to play some Celestial build, go Mirage. I wouldn't play Chronomancer for that reason. Let's now go to the heavy armor classes. Heavy armor classes are, I would say, a little bit special because, for example, let's start with Warrior. Bladezorn is again power favored, 100%. You would never play a Condi Bladezorn. And because of that, Celestial is just a meme. Celestial Bladezorn is like so much overcooked. What can I tell you? This is like crazy. I would never play that. Absolute meme. Never played it. But Celestial Berserker as a healer has the same problem as, for example, Scrapper, Mechanist, and even Untamed, that you are in the middle ground. So that's why I put it in B tier. You could make a build that works like that. Does it make sense? Not so much, but it's not meme tier. The thing is, it is really hard to find the middle ground where you still get the damaging traits and the nice traits that Berserker provides, while also getting the healing output that you need, or the boon output that you need. So that's really, you are forced into tactics. You are of course forced to take Berserker. And what's the last trait line that you take? If you don't take Discipline, you don't have any adrenaline generation. So you are almost at the, so to say, classic heal Berserker build. But then your damage is like very bad. So you could make it work, but if you drop the staff, you have very little healing. So it's like, the problem is like, this build is just very like niched down by its choices that it has to take. And it's like, you can't get all of them in one build. That's why it's B tier. Let's now go to Revenant. Revenant is the only elite spec that has 3 elite specs that can provide wounds to its party. Alacrity or quickness, that is. So let's start with Renegade. I think a Celestial Renegade could work. I think it's probably for me A tier, but no one plays this. Why does no one play this? Because Renegade as a healer is not really that crazy good. So maybe because of that, we have to put it in B tier, because it's like Renegade healer is already not that good. And then if you play Celestial version, I mean, maybe to get some healing output, but I think the problem is that you can see a lot of builds on B tier. They could work. They are not meme. They are not working at all in meme. But in B tier, they could work. But the problem is they are so overshadowed by the S tier builds that there is a big gap between S and B tier. And only a small fraction, like Harbinger, is in my opinion worth saying, okay, it's a little bit better than B tier, but not S tier yet. And I think Renegade has to go in B tier because of that. Maybe I'm a bit harsh. Maybe you can make an argument for A tier, but I don't see it. Celestial Herald, on the other hand. I think Celestial Herald is one of the builds that work, and that's why I would put it in A tier. But they are not broken, not as the S tier builds. So as Harbinger, I would say actually surprisingly good, but not S tier yet. And then we have Vindicator. Vindicator, in my opinion, as a Celestial build, doesn't work. I think it's meme, because you deal no damage as an Alacrity heal Vindicator, and if you put Celestial on top of that, you will still deal almost no damage, because you need to run the Scepter, and you need to run your Alliance stance, and probably Centaur stance, and maybe Chalice, one of those 3. You can drop, but 2 are necessary, so you have no Condi stance. Whereas the Quickness Herald can easily run, for example, Malex and Dragon stance and apply a lot of conditions while also healing passively. Vindicator can't really do that, because if you drop the healing, you have only your dodge. So why would you then run a Celestial build at all? I really think that's, for me, maybe I'm a bit harsh on Vindicator, maybe it's close to B tier, but I don't really see it as a Celestial build being played. And lastly, we have Guardian. What can I say? Favorite child of ArenaNet, Firebrand, easy S tier, really strong Celestial build, works very well in a lot of scenarios, but has the same problem as every Firebrand. It's high skill requirement, because you have to position correctly, you have to know all your skills, otherwise it doesn't provide that much utility. The damage output can be lackluster if you focus too much on healing. If you focus too little on healing, your healing is very bad. So it is a high skill build, but if you make it work, it's really, really good. Easy S tier because of that. And then we have Willbender. Celestial Willbender is for me something that is also a somewhat crazy cook, to be honest, because no one actually plays that for the most part in group scenarios. Of course, you can make a solo build out of that, but Is it good? Depends who you asked. I would say Willbender has the potential to be good as a Celestial build, but the problem is you are again somewhat like limited by your traits. Is it as bad as in B tier builds? Depends who you asked. I would say it's low A tier, but I think you could make an argument for putting into high B tier. I think both of those are very valid. I think Celestial Firebrand is just way better, so I would probably not put Celestial Willbender in my group as a healer. It's just quite memey, but I can see the damage could be there. So I think that's my last take how I would say this looks like. Please let me know your takes in the comments down below. Again, this is my personal opinion. Please don't offend me for that. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks a lot for watching. Thanks again to all my supporters, and I hope to see you all in the next video.